Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explain you how can you play against the advanced variation in the French. You need to know that advanced variation is one of the most popular lines in the French, but there is a very simple way how you can just get the equal position without learning many lines, or you can just understand couple basic ideas. Of course, I will show you couple basic lines, but you don't need to know that much theory to get an equal position. But for the beginning, I also want to remind you that you can visit the website rocksolid.matbobula.com and you can get completely for free a full complete opening repertoire, rock solid opening repertoire. I recommend it especially for positional players that you want to just get a good position and try to beat the opponent in the middle game or in the end game. Before I will explain you how to play against main lines in the advanced variation, I have to tell you two words about some sidelines. Because the main line is of course c3 at the moment, that white is trying to protect that pawn, but there are two sidelines that you can meet from time to time. One sideline is queen to g4. It is called Nimzowitz attack, and I have to admit that for a very long time it was a big problem for me, because I tried to capture the d4, I tried to just develop my pieces, but somehow white was able to get a strong attack on my king, especially when I was castling kingside. But I remember that I read in the newspaper that there is like a new idea how you can play against it. I tried it and it really worked. So the move that I recommend to play in this position is queen a5. Queen is of course checking the king. c3 is not a great move right now because pawn will just take at the d4. Pawn cannot take it. Queen takes, then knight goes to c6. Black has got a very good position. And white usually has to stop the check with the bishop. And now black goes back with a queen, attacking pawn at the b2 and also attacking pawn at the d4. And now white has got no choice because that pawn is very important because rook at a1 is also hanging. So white plays b3 and now black captures at the d4. And the difference is that white's queen side it's maybe not completely destroyed, but it's not very strong at the moment. You can see that bishop is misplaced, knight cannot be developed, pawn at the c2 is backwards. It's not a great position. So white usually develops knight f3, black continues knight c6, developing the knight, protecting the pawn, bishop d3, bishop goes to d7, white castles, and now another key move, because queen a5 was a first crucial move, and now another key move that ruins white's plan, which is queenside castle. Queenside castle, and now white is prepared to start the attack on the king side, but king goes into the queen side, and this is the reason why white's position is worse. Later, of course, you are developing your pieces on the king side, and black has got a very good position. So this is first sideline, and this is like a simple recipe how you can play against it. And there is also another sideline. It's knight goes to f3. And in this position, if opponent doesn't protect that pawn with the pawn, the best idea is just to capture that. Opponent plays bishop d3, and now take a look. Without the d4 pawn, pawn at e5 is weak. It is possible to develop knight here. That knight can go to g6, but then white will protect e5 pawn, and white has got very annoying attacks with the h pawn. This is the reason why I recommend to develop knight to d7. So knight from d7 is attacking that pawn, white castles, and now knight goes to e7. The idea is that black will place the knight at the c6, and that pawn is under attack. So bishop goes somewhere, knight goes to c6, rook goes to e1, and now black just develops bishop to e7, and black has got no problems. What black can do later, black can most likely is going to castle kingside. Of course, be careful because sometimes there is a Greek gift. Of course, I see that now bishop is controlling g5, but Greek gift is possible. This is the reason why h6 maybe has to be played in some positions. You also need to know that a good idea might be to play knight c5, exchanging that bishop. And there is old saying, among players who are playing French, that if white has got that bishop, white can checkmate black's king, no light square bishop, no checkmate. So that might be also a good idea. And just continue development on black and just delay castling and just complete development. And black position is pretty good. So you don't need to be afraid of those two sidelines if only you follow those my hints. And now let's go into the most popular variation, which is pawn goes to c3. Pawn is protecting that pawn at the d4. And now you can see that black can play queen b6. That queen is attacking backwards pawn. In the future, the d4 pawn will be backwards, and also b2 is under attack. So white cannot develop that bishop because b2 is hanging. White usually plays knight f3. And now the main move in this position is knight c6. And I have to admit that I played that variation knight c6, but I also played the knight c6 variation myself. But in my opinion, the easiest way to get an equal position is bishop d7. I'm also playing that variation from time to time. And why bishop d7 is that good? The idea is very simple. If you know that black's light square bishop is bad, you want to exchange it. You want to move it to b5. You want to exchange it for the good white's light square bishop. So this is the idea. And now you need to know that there are like three main moves that white can play. White can play a3, bishop e2, or bishop d3. Let's start maybe with the a3 move. Now you need to understand one idea, that I really don't think so that bishop b5 is a great move at this position. I told you that I want you to exchange it, but I don't like bishop b5 immediately because there is a very annoying variation c4. And you know, even if bishop takes c4, pawn takes c4, white plays d5, and I have to admit, I tried that line and I never liked it. It's like white sacrifices a pawn, but then white has got some strong initiative, white has got some strong pawns. So what should black do to avoid that? And this is a very important idea. A very good idea for black, if black wants to avoid it, is to capture c takes d4. White captures back with the pawn, and now bishop goes to b5. And now you don't need to bother with any c4 moves or something, because you are just exchanging the light square bishop. And this is actually one of the very important idea that refers to every single way that white can play. So bishop takes b5, queen takes b5. You can see that queen is blocking castling. So white plays knight c3, queen a6. You keep the queen watching on the diagonal. Knight goes to e2. If white wants to castle, white has to block the diagonal. And now black is developing other pieces. Knight goes to c6. Knight is attacking pawn at the d4. White castles. Black plays knight to e7. White develops bishop. Knight goes to f5. Because the target is pawn at the d4. This is a weak backward pawn that has to be protected by white's pieces. Another important element is the c-file. That once you develop your pieces, it's a good idea to move your rook into the c-file. White plays here and bishop goes to e7. Queen d2, black castles. Rook goes to c1, rook goes to c8. And this is the position that it's completely equal. Every single piece is developed and black has got no problems at the moment. Another variation that you need to know is bishop e2. After bishop e2, you should play in a very similar way like after a3. So pawn captures d4. Also, in case you play bishop b5, there is that very annoying move c4. This is the reason why you start with the pawn takes d4. Pawn takes back and you play bishop b5. So you can see this is exactly the same pattern. Knight goes to c3 and now you capture. Queen captures e2. Position is very similar to the previous one. Of course, now there is no queen at a6, queen is at b6, but this is also a good place for the queen. It's attacking backward pawn at the d4. Knight goes to e7. Black is trying to develop pieces. Castle, knight goes to f5. Pawn at the d4 is under attack. Yes, bishop goes to e3, bishop goes to e7. In case white is attacking that knight, knight can always escape to the h4. That bishop is supporting that. White plays rook c1, and now just black simply develops the knight, rook d1, castle, and Also, I want to tell you that two most important elements in this position is backwards pawn at the d4 that you want to attack, and later you want to bring your rooks into the c file. You want to maybe win that c file. Maybe you want to place your knight into the c4. In general, black has got zero problems. And finally, we have got the last variation that white can play. It's bishop d3. And now you need to know that here principles and ideas are pretty much similar. So you also start with c takes d4. And now in case pawn captures d4, then bishop goes to b5. And ideas are 99% same as in the previous variations, or I would even say 100%, right? Maybe white's setup is slightly different, but you can do this. But in that variation, also it is possible to play knight takes d4. So now, of course, bishop b5, that idea is not possible because white has got two pieces pointing there. So in case opponent plays knight takes d4, you just develop your knight to c6, attacking the knight and also attacking the pawn. So most likely white hasn't got that much choice. White has to take it. Bishop takes here. Of course, in case white castles or white plays something, like a random move, the idea also might be to go bishop b5 and exchange that bishop. But usually white plays queen e2 trying to block that idea. And now black just develops the knight. And now very important thing. Because I told you that when white has got pawns at the d4 and e5, knight should go to the f5 square, attacking the d4 pawn. But in case there is no pawn at the d4 and e5 pawn is not protected, a good square for the knight is g6. You can see that it's really that pawn is a really good target. Also, there is knight f4 possibility. This is the reason why white usually plays knight f3 and black plays bishop e7, and this is also just an equal position. So this is the way you're supposed to play against that bishop d3 move. It's slightly different than the other lines. So I hope you understand better how can you play against advanced variation in the French, and that using that idea with queen b6, bishop d7, and later playing bishop b5, exchanging that bishop, this is the easiest way for black to get the equal position. By the way, in the previous video, when I'm testing rock solid opening repertoire in practice, you can check one of my games. I also played that variation against pretty strong opponent, and I got a really good position after the opening. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe the channel, please click thumb up, and please leave the comment, and hope to see you next time. Don't also forget to get the opening repertoire. You can find the link below the video. Thank you and goodbye.